Iran's proxies in Gaza, in Lebanon, and in Syria are being blunted. But Iran is trying to harm Israel's people wherever it can. This morning, an Iranian drone from Yemen was shot down west of Israel. Iran is also trying to murder Israel's people from Judea and Samaria, the West Bank. These crucial hills surrounding Jerusalem and tower over central Israel, including over Tel Aviv's skyscrapers and Israel's international airport. Enemies in Judea and Samaria can cut across Israel in just a few minutes. Multiple attacks have been launched from there this year, including suicide bombings. We know Iran has been sending major advanced weapons shipments to its proxies there. We know how many Iranian arms shipments have been intercepted, but we don't know how many Iranians' arms shipments got through. Like on the other 7 fronts, Israel will not allow Iran to threaten its people. Front by front, Israel has dealt with Iran's threat. Israel will continue to push Iran back wherever it attacks. The Iranian regime is targeting Palestinians. Iran's proxies, Hamas and Islamic Jihad, are targeting the Palestinian government in the West Bank. Hamas and Islamic Jihad took over parts of the city of Jenin. Palestinian forces couldn't enter. Hamas and Islamic Jihad stole Palestinian government vehicles and paraded with them. Hamas and Islamic Jihad blew up a car bomb at a Palestinian base. 3 officers and 2 civilians were hurt. The Palestinian government was humiliated and appeared powerless. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas ordered a major operation in Jenin. His forces surrounded Jenin, set up checkpoints, and began fighting back. Have you noticed? The Palestinian Authority in the West Bank is dealing with the same thing in Jenin that Israel has to deal with in Gaza. An enemy that fights from civilian areas, hides in and around hospitals, and targets civilians. I'd love to see the Palestinian Authority finally speak out against Hamas and condemn the October 7th massacre. But that might be too much to expect from the government that gives money to terrorists who attack Israelis. Now, let's take some questions from our audience watching live on social media.
Thank you, Jonathan. Our first question comes from Adam on Instagram. Do we know how Israel will respond to the requests of the 12 Druze villages in southern Syria to be annexed or governed by Israel?
Well, thank you very much for the question, Adam. This is a really important question because now what we're looking for in Syria is, at the end of the day, the falling of the Assad regime, that we still don't know who's going to govern in Syria in the day after. And this is something that Israel is really looking upward to see and make sure that every weapon that the Syrian regime had will not fall into any terrorist organizations or anyone that could ever harm Israel in its way. And one of the major things is that Israel is by now making sure to maintain a buffer zone in order to make sure that Al-Qaeda or ISIS or other terror groups that currently are in Syria will not threaten any Israeli citizen. So that is super important to understand. To my knowledge, there is no Israeli plan to annex any parts of Syria that is not already in control of any Israeli holdings. We need to make sure as a global international community that at the end of the day, the Druze in Syria are afraid of the day after, of terror groups that would attack them. Also, the Christians in Syria are afraid of the day after. Also, the Kurds in Syria and other minority groups that could be targeted by ISIS, by Al-Qaeda, by Jabhat al-Nusra, or by other organization groups that currently are in Syria. And we need to make sure as an international community that these communities are being protected for their own good, but also for humanity.
Thank you. Iris in our Instagram stories asked, every day we see headlines that a hostage deal is closer than ever. Are you hearing anything that supports this assertion?
Well, we've been hearing a lot in the last few days that there might be some sort of an agreement or some sort of a deal in order to make sure that the 100 hostages that are currently being held in Gaza by Hamas terrorist organization will be back, whether to meet their families or those who already we know that are dead to get back to burial inside of Israel. I'm really hoping that we will see that day soon. We know that everything that happened surrounding, in the last few months, that Hamas have stayed alone in the arena, where Hezbollah has abandoned them, where the Assad regime that was also supportive and made sure to transfer weapons to Hezbollah throughout Syria from Iran has also collapsed. And this is something that puts a lot of pressure on Hamas. At the end of the day, we need to make sure that all of the hostages are back home and that Hamas can't rearm, regroup, and recontrol Gaza ever again in any future that we can see in our sight. And that's something that is really important to understand.
Thank you. Samson on Instagram is asking, with Hezbollah in such a weak position, should we expect to see the Lebanese government taking action to disarm Hezbollah?
Well, Lebanon is really in an important turning point in its history. For the first time in about 50 years, Lebanon is independent in a lot of ways. One thing, the Assad regime was controlling over Lebanese politics and Lebanese territories for many years, for the last 50 years. And this is something that cutting the chain of supply to Hezbollah from Iran through Syria could really affect that Hezbollah will not be able to regain back their powers and their weapons. And that's something that could really help and assist the Lebanese military to take over and control these territories and control the remaining supplies that Hezbollah still has. But this is something that is also important to notice, that in the end of the day, Hezbollah is in its weakest position for decades right now, and that was because of the intense Israeli operation against Hezbollah weapons and against Hezbollah military on the Israeli border. But it's important that the 1701 resolution that was agreed on right now in the ceasefire, at the end of the day, it's a peace paper. And that peace paper doesn't really make assurances for the future. And I believe that Israel should get really involved by having an actual peace agreement between Israel and Lebanon, and to assist Lebanon at the end of the day in making sure that Hezbollah is not capable of returning back any of their military capabilities. And I really hope that as an Israeli and as a Lebanese, and as someone who's really looking forward to visit Lebanon in the near future one day. And that's something that I think that the Lebanese government nowadays are really working in order to make sure that Hezbollah will not be able to regain back their powers that they had. We can hear that from politicians. We can hear that from presidential nominees that are running to become the president of Lebanon. And you can say that the whole atmosphere in the Lebanese society has changed a lot because Hezbollah dragged Lebanon to a war that has nothing to do with any Lebanese issue. And like the journalist, the Lebanese Shia journalist, Nadim Kutaish said, Israel and Lebanon are not enemies. We have some difficulties, we have some issues that we need to solve, but we can solve them by negotiating and by sitting at the same table and talking with each other. And I believe that this is what we should do.
Thank you. Kitten on Instagram asks, after the fall of the Assad regime, do we know if Israel has any plans to attack the head of the snake in Tehran?
This is a really important question. At the end of the day, Iran is holding an ongoing front against of Israel in 8 fronts. We have the Hezbollah front that is now in its weakening position. We had the front in Syria that was held also by the Assad regime, and the chain of supplies has been cut. We have the front, like I mentioned earlier in the daily briefing, from the Judea and Samaria or the West Bank that are being targeting also Palestinian territories, but also targeting Israelis from that territory. We have the front that is still ongoing in Gaza by Hamas. They need to be also eliminated. We have the Houthis in Yemen that in the following couple of weeks have sent numerous times drones or missiles that they were intercepted before they crossed over towards Israel. At the end of the day, the head of the snake is the Islamic Republic of Iran. And I believe that Israel shouldn't stand alone in that battle. The international community, mainly the US, needs to join Israel in an effort to make sure that the Islamic Republic of Iran, that the Islamic regime in Iran can't control anymore or make or threaten any citizen all across of the globe, not just Israelis, also Americans and also other Iranians that are against the Islamic Republic of Iran's rule and regime. Like the Assad regime fell, I'm looking for the day that we also see the Iranian people liberated from the people that are responsible for their economic crisis and them not having a future that they can live and prosper as they are. So this is, in my opinion, something that needs to be a really wider international community thing and not just an Israeli thing.
Thank you, Jonathan. This is our final question from Instagram. The UK Foreign Office has dropped its advice to not travel to Israel. Do you believe that Israel is now safe for tourists again?
Israel has always been safe for tourists. As we've seen in the last year and a half, Israel was attacked by the Islamic Republic of Iran directly twice. We had the attacks from Gaza, we had the attacks from Hezbollah. I'm not undermining them for 1 second, but at the end of the day, Israel made sure to protect each and every one of its citizens and also each and everyone who visited Israel throughout this time of the year. And this is something that Israel is continue to have and maintain safety of its citizens and everyone who visits. I really recommend everyone that want to see in their own eyes the Israeli society and how, for example, now in Haifa, we have decorations for the upcoming Christmas celebrations. Also in Jerusalem, there are decorations that have been set up in the streets in order to celebrate my holiday, Christmas. And that's something that I believe a lot of people are not aware of how the day life in Israel are actually and how they are, having their own thing. And I believe that this is one of the major things that people don't understand. That at the end of the day, Israel is as any other nation. Yes, we have a lot of enemies that want to eliminate us, but at the end of the day, we are united, we are free, and we are going to make sure to continue to be this beacon of light in the Middle East, this vibrant democracy that makes sure that its minorities are protected and are free to be who they are. And I really recommend everyone watching and haven't visited Israel yet, or your friends, come along and you can call me also, and we can travel Israeli cities all together, and I promise you it will be fun. So thank you very much for everyone that tuned in. That's all we have time for, and we'll be back tomorrow at 3 p.m. Israel time and 8 a.m. East Coast time.